Hello, my coding minions. We're picking up, believe it or not, the meme continues with another iteration of this freaking video series. This is now part 6 after I deployed this app to render. I commented near the end of the last video where we deployed and got a live URL of our app you can go to, bg3characterplanner.onrender.com, and y'all can add a bunch of levels here because it's all based on one file system, but it doesn't really matter all that much. We had deployed it, gotten a live link, and I said that, there should be a way for us to remove levels. Otherwise, this thing is not going to be a great planner. Because right now, the only way to remove levels is to literally go to the character.json file and delete things by hand. So that's not a great UI UX design. It's also not feasible for us to constantly have to make changes to our character.json data, pushing it to our GitHub repo, and planning and calling that a day. So in this video, we're going to add a small feature, and we're going to learn something called CI/CD, which is short for continuous integration and continuous deployment. So again, this is a series meant for newbies, so if you ever hear the term CI/CD pipeline, and it's typically shorthanded as CI/CD, continuous integration / continuous development, right? We basically are going to practice that today, and you can now add that as a buzzword to your resume going, I'm now familiar and have technically, in the most debate lord kind of way, I technically know it's and have implemented a CI/CD pipeline into this project. So that's what we're all about, and this is why I advise all my students to just build things and deploy them, because everything you learn and think about along the way is going to be something you can learn and talk about in a blog post, a LinkedIn post, or even just on your resume or during your interviews. This is all good stuff to have. So we know that from the last video, we set up our own repositories for these, if you haven't already, and deployed our main branches on over to render, right? So we are going to learn how to switch off the main branch, develop a new feature, and then merge it back to the main branch, push it, which will trigger an automatic deployment after we have integrated it and tested it ourselves. So that part may not be continuous and automatic, but nevertheless, it is technically CI/CD. Okay, so that's the goal. The goal is to make a level down button of some kind. Come on, Epic Pen, don't take forever to load so I don't have tons of dead air. All right, we're going to integrate some kind of, whoops, I clicked the wrong link there. That was a link to Epic Pen. I tried to close an update, but Epic Pen is the app I use on Windows, by the way, to do what we're doing right now. We're going to add some kind of level down button whose sole purpose is to, you guessed it, its purpose is going to be to, I should have scrolled down first. The level down button will be a danger style button that will then remove or pop off the last level from the list as its goal. That's what it's going to do. And again, rather than making an individual X for each of these where you can remove individual ones, you could implement it that way if you wanted to, but I'm choosing not to do that only because the way character progression works in D&D 5e and thus Baldur's Gate 3 is that you want to remove the last level from the list and work your way backwards, because the logic of subclasses, spell slots, and features and all that stuff is crazy. So I think this is a more comprehensive way, or not a more, not lore, but system accurate way to do so for D&D and Baldur's Gate. So that's going to be our goal, which means we're going to have to do the same things we learned in this process from the very beginning of this video series in part 1. Again, the meme continues. I'll have 20 parts of this video series building a full-fledged app at this rate. But we learned about using some kind of route testing tool. We opted to use Hopscotch, so I didn't have to make y'all install or do anything with Postman, since it's also been pissing off the community as of late. We built a very simple app that we deploy on a local port with some middlewares and server-side code. And we learned about testing the routes, test the server logic, make sure it does what we want it to, responds the way we want it to, and then make the client-side code and the DOM reflect the changes the server is doing and make requests to the server all programmatically. So the same thing will hold true with this level down button. We are not going to rely on any kind of HTML default behavior. We're going to be writing it all from our JavaScript code. So let's go ahead and add this feature. But as always, I got to mention, check the description down below for a link to the Covalence IO repo that will have the latest up-to-date code. Go to the branch drop-down of the repo and look for end of video X to see where we are. The main branch will also be the one that's most up-to-date. And the one I have personally is where I'll be writing this code into. So when I deploy it to the main branch, it will deploy to render. I did a quick test of testing something and reverting it. So my render dashboard will show that I've already deployed something today. It's because I tested something. CI/CD, deployed it, and I was like, okay, sick, it works. And then I was curious and reverted my commit and redeployed that, and it also worked. So we are good to go. So this, if you've been from the last video or even from the very beginning of the series, you can have the character planner deployed on your own render account with your own render live URL. And if it's connected to your main branch like it is to mine, which I showed y'all in the last video, all this will be pushed up. And as always, if you're interested in learning more about server-side or client-side development, or even learning everything about React state management and all the fun tools that it entails, consider looking in the description down below for a link to our community membership. For $25 a month, you get access to 300 plus hours of front-end course, back-end course. Combine them, that's our entire full stack program and my standalone React course, as well as any courses, which I'm working on too at the moment. Added into our course offerings are given to you for free in the community membership. You also get access to chatting with me and other Covalence community members in our Discord, so you always have live and fast and supportive, unlike Stack Overflow and Reddit sometimes, mentorship support as you go through your coding journey. So consider joining up and checking the description down below for a link to that. Otherwise, let's continue on as always. All right, so make sure you have your Hopscotch browser windows open, get your render dashboard open, have your app either ready to go or running on your local port as normal. And from here, what we're going to do is, rather than begin coding this out on our main branch. Do I have anything in my main branch that changes right now? I don't. Okay, so make sure you have no changes in your main branch. If you do, simply write the following command, git checkout asterisk, and it will make sure that it will just nuke all current changes in your main branch if you've been doing anything off camera, or if you want to have them, then just add them, commit them, and push them. If you want to keep those changes, you want to revert them, then you write git checkout asterisk is the easiest way to destroy those changes. But again, the main branch is where our stable code is going to live. So what we need to do now is make a new branch, which we can do via git checkout -b. And we're going to call this the dev branch. Now, normally you call this the name of the feature, the name of the bug fix, the card it goes to. If you're in a agile environment, you probably have a scrum master that assigns you like a bug fix or a feature that comes with an ID that lines up with some kind of card, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to take the just blanket umbrella, kind of like blanket approach, and call this the dev branch. This is where we're going to continuously integrate, test, and when we're ready to go, merge it to main, and then it will continuously deploy to our render link. So this will make the branch and switch to it. There you go. You notice here the dash origin disappeared. It might look a little bit different on your machines if you're in Mac, Linux, or something like that, or not using command or Windows like I am. If you're using WSL or just command prompt, it may look a little bit different, but nevertheless, our dev branch locally does not know where to push its code to. So the first time we push, we're going to do a set upstream git push -u origin dev, and origin is the remote URL that we learned about in the previous video. That is your GitHub repository link for where you're going to push your code. This is my personal one that I deployed, and not the one on Covalence, which I'll be making sure I'll just copy the code to and push to. So, okay, let's get underway. Since we're on the dev branch, this is where we can code out what we want to code out, and then eventually merge it back over to main. So this is our dev branch. Let's go. Okay. So first things first, I think we should start in the server and make a new route and make a new tab in Hopscotch in order to begin testing the server side aspects. We're going to open a new tab in Hopscotch first. We're going to click on delete. We're going to call this route HTTP local / localhost 3000, where our app is currently running, and we're going to call this the level down. That's what I tested earlier, as you saw from the autocomplete there. We're going to call this route the level down route. It's a name that makes sense to me. We're going to call it the level down. Again, it's a path. You can call it pizza for all that I care. Level down. That's what we're going to call it. That's the method. It's going to be delete. The path is going to be / level down, and we should send it, and it should be able to send a response back. As of right now, my server doesn't have one, so we get this. We get nothing because my server is not running. So we're going to go over to our Commander terminals, make sure our code is actually running. Every time, man. I need to get like a second camera for like looks to a second camera when I do something stupid. We're going to click on send, and yeah, this is the 404 result not found, or path not found, that Express sends you. It's a pre-formatted HTML page that says cannot method / path because it can't find it. It's a 404, which means not found. That's fine. That's what we expected to see. Okay, cool. So now that we've decided what our path and method are going to be, let's go ahead and create it over yonder in our code base. I'm going to be consistent with how I've done these so far by having a comment above the route itself, and we're adding it at the full application level, as this thing isn't big enough to warrant stacking routes on top of routes on top of routes or anything complicated like that. So we're going to say, hey, Express app we've been coding on, add a method called delete the path of level down. Let's add our comment that says delete localhost. Just kidding, I think it was HTTP localhost 3000 / level down. There we go. That is our path and our method to get here, just so us newbies can figure out what's going on. Intercept and have our action, our request and response as needed. I'm going to delete this comment that says res redirect up here. We're done with that. We're no longer doing that. We don't need it anymore. And I'm going to add my try catch block, and I'm going to copy and paste my catch error handler, which is not a great error handler, but it gets the job done. Gives us a very clear log when something goes wrong, and we're going to copy and paste it so our try catch has it set up. Okay. Now let's go ahead and just send ourselves a nice response. It says level down, just a simple string response that we're going to send. And once this saves and nodemon auto restarts the project, I'm going to head back over to Hopscotch and test and check it out. We got the response, which means now the foundation, the groundwork has been laid for this new API endpoint, which means we can actually start coding out the logic of it, the guts of it, and continue on from there. So if you recall how we wrote the previous one, it'll be very similar to level up. We're going to not need a request body. There's nothing in the body we're going to have to care about, because all we need to do is read the character data. So I'm actually going to copy and paste the character data read right there, because we're going to need to read that. Oh, don't forget our async keyword on this function callback, this action. Okay. So now that we read the data, we're going to have to do basically the opposite of what this did up here, which is make sure our character total levels are not 0 or less to make sure they can't go negative. So you know what? I'm going to copy and paste this if statement even. Well, some repetitive code here because, well, this logic is similar, just in reverse. So I will say if our levels are less than or equal to 0, we have a problem. We have a bad request. Level down failed, because the limit threshold, bottom, what's the opposite of limit? I mean, I'm guessing it's... What's the antonym? Is it antonym is what I'm looking for? Instead of synonym? Antonym of limit. I can't believe I'm looking up English terms right now. Minimum, that makes sense. Level, I don't, what did I think of that? Oh, I'm so dumb. I can't believe I Googled what the word minimum was. Okay, well, nevertheless, my stupidity aside, minimum is a good word for our error handler there to tell us that, well, something kind of went wrong here. We cannot decrease the levels any further because we can't do so. So there you go. That is basically making sure that our total levels can't go below like what our initial data starts it as, because this is what basically removing all of our levels will revert it back to initial data right here. That's what's going to end up happening. So there's our quick check to make sure that doesn't happen, and we have some proper error handling around that, or at least some level of error handling. So that is an early response and return, which means everything below the if statement now is after it reads the data, confirms that we can actually level down. Now it's the logic to start leveling down, which is very simple and the opposite of what our level up was. Look at the character data, look at the total levels on the character data, and I simply want to subtract 1 from its current value. So it goes from 12 to 11, 11 to 10, etc. Easy enough. Move our total levels down 1. And we also have to remove the last class and level combination we had in our data. So right now I have a whole bunch of levels that go down to 11 being barbarian. And if we have an array, the easiest way to manipulate an array to remove the last element is a built-in method called, if I can do this, pop. The pop method is a mutative method in that it will remove the last element and return it if you need it. So it will remove the last element and also modify the array. So if we call pop, it'll delete what I have highlighted right here and also return it to us after popping it if we need it. So if we don't care about that value, so we can say popped element equals character data dot classes is the array, and the array pop off the last element from the array, and it returns that to this variable here. But if we don't care about actually what that element was, in our case, I don't care what it was, we can just tell it to pop off the last element or object, aka the level combo, from the array, and it is successfully modified, right? We have mutated the data as we expected, which means it's time to go ahead and tell our character service to write our new data based on after we mutated it. And let's go ahead, and what did my message look like from the post request? It said level up successful. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna send a similar object that says message level down successful, like that. Is that how you spell successful? It's gonna be for now. That's good enough. Me fall English, that's impossible. Yeah, so it's gonna say level down successful. And that looks like a, again, pretty solid looking route there, and it gets the job done. So read the data, confirm we can actually level down. If not, return and respond early with a proper status code and message for ourselves. So us as developers and Hopscotch or our logs will know what's going on. Otherwise, it's going to level the character total levels down by 1, pop off the last level up we did, rewrite the character data, and then send a appropriate response telling us that happened. So this is a pretty solid delete route endpoint. Let's go ahead and test it out in our Hopscotch tab. Before we got the simple level down response we had set up, but now we actually get level down successful. So we know we can go back and refetch the data, and we indeed have our level 11 barbarian is disappeared. So if I remove a few more levels, yeah, we're down to level 7 now. So yeah, every time I click send on the delete tab, it will level down my character sheet appropriately. And looking at this now, y'all might be thinking, well, hey Luke, when I write and delete my levels, couldn't I just send the character data as part of the response in case it's needed on the front end to save ourselves some requests here or there? We could. Maybe that'll be a part 7. I mean, we're the ones writing this REST API, so we might as well take advantage of the fact we're writing it by customizing the responses to make our front-end code even sleeker, believe it or not. So yeah. All right, so there is our integration of and testing of our server-side route to successfully level a character downwards, which it works, which means now it's time to update the DOM and our client-side logic to reflect this new API endpoint we have written. So on the front end right now, let's refresh it. Yep, I'm kind of zoomed out so you may not see everything. That's fine. I know this is like the poorest styling ever, but again, it looks good enough and gets the job done. Yeah, so like I said, we're going to add a level down button. Let's go ahead and do that and give ourselves an easy selector to work with, so we don't have too much code to have to worry, or crazy selectors to think about, right? So I'm basically going to copy and paste the level up button, and we'll put one called level down. Should that be on the left or the right-hand side, technically? I mean, level up makes sense on the right-hand side, because on the right-hand side, typically that's where your greater numbers go. On the left-hand side, that's where your lesser numbers go. Yeah, I guess this makes sense. We'll do level down on the left-hand side. And then we'll call this one a button danger, because it is going to, you guessed it, level us down. So we want to be a very clear visual indicator that that's going to happen. Let's push the 2 buttons away with some margin here. I think we do margin end, and we'll do like 3. So margin end 3. It should just bump it away a little bit there. So there we go. Now we have a little crowbar separation between the level up and level down buttons. Looking good. That's all we really need to do there. Just kidding. We need to call this a different button. So, you know, we should probably call them different buttons as submit buttons, because they're a little bit different in names now. So I'm making a choice here since I'm writing the HTML. It makes more sense to call, if I'm going to call this like the level down button, I'll call this the level up button, and I'll have to appropriately change my selector for the submit button in my JavaScript code. So let's call this level down button. We're going to call this level up button, and we're going to go change the selectors in my JavaScript appropriately so. Yes, so we have the submit button. I'm going to hit F2. We can also right click and rename symbol here in VS Code. That allows us to change a variable name, and everywhere it is referenced at the exact same time. It's a very simple yet fancy find and replace. We're going to call this the level up button because that makes the most sense. Notice here it changed the variable name now, but not the selector. So we got to make sure that level up selector, level up button selector, is appropriately changed as well. I'm going to copy and paste this because we're also going to have the level down button exist right here as a selector because we're going to select it and call it a day. So there we go. All right, we have our level up and level down buttons. No typos, case sensitive, looks good so far, unless y'all see something, in which case get in the comments and yell at me for having another typo in this video series that causes a dumb mistake that I then have to explain on camera so I don't have a bunch of dead air. I'm going to collapse our level up button add event listener for now. We're going to go down yonder and write a level down button add event listener. It'll be a click that runs the following function. I'm going to capture the event since we're inside of a form. We're going to do e.prevent default to make sure we prevent the default behavior of the level down button from messing up our code here. I mean, we're inside of a form, right? And it's a submit button. Yeah, I want to make sure it doesn't do anything. I want to make sure the default behavior is prevented. Okay. So, expanding the level up button here. Remember what we did is we did a fetch to our endpoint with a method of post, and we had to pass headers and body to it. Thankfully, the delete method doesn't have, in our case, any kind of JSON body data associated with it, so our fetch request will be even simpler, but it's going to use pretty much the exact same logic we have down here. Let's go ahead and do so, right? What we're going to do is say, make a fetch request to the following endpoint. We called it level down in our hopscotch test, if you recall. It was / level down, and that's all it was. The method is not a get request, so we're going to have to specify some options, and the only option we need to write is the method delete, and that is all. That is the only configuration property in this object that we need. From there, it'll do exactly what our other request did, right? It will then get a JSON response from our server and parse the streaming data to us with another promise. It will then grab that data, log it if we need it for some reason, which I believe will just say level down successful. So it'll be consistent at least with our level up button. It'll make a request back to the server to get our most up-to-date and in-sync character data. We talked about that back in video 4, where I made the choice to do it this way just to keep things in sync with the server and not have to worry about the DOM falling out of sync with the server and writing logic for manipulating the DOM. Instead, I can just simply update the character, clear the table, and update the character with the freshest data possible. And not great error handling, but nevertheless something rather than nothing. So I'm going to copy that and just paste it here because you see that it does the exact same thing. In terms of what it does. So I see some code smell going on or some dry, do not repeat yourself. I see some very repetitive code happening that we can probably move into a utility function of some kind because there's some repetitive code. And if I see repetitive code, I'm always jonesing. I'm wondering, how can I move that to some kind of function that handles the repetitive part for me to make my call signature even easier? Okay, but believe it or not, that should be all we need to do with the code we've already written. As you can see, both the endpoint and the client-side code, so server-side and client-side code, was some copying and pasting and some editing. And believe it or not, that's like the majority of coding CRUD apps. So I'm going to refresh the DOM. We have, for some reason, Sorcerer is our last one for this weird, this is a terrible build. You know what, let's go back to level 1 Barbarian and make something a bit more sensical. Now, the option dropdown, we didn't have to read its value because we don't care what's in there for leveling down. So let's click level down. That's what I'm talking about. All right, y'all. We got ourselves an app that actually can be used on the render deploy link now. Okay, so that was pretty good. Let's level up Barbarian to 5. That gets us extra attack. For those of you that are D&D BG3 heads here, you already know what these things are. Probably. If not, if you're not like, maybe you're not a min-maxer, maybe you're not a power gamer. I don't think I'm really a power gamer. I just really like making characters on D&D Beyond. And just coming up with like character background stories and RP and making a mini on Hero Forge and making a character sheet and how I would level it up and make it make sense in a story. It's fun for me, right? That's what I do in my spare time. There's our level 5 Barbarian. We get extra attack. Barbarian in 5e right now in BG3 is notoriously not great after level 5 because they don't get a lot of other benefits to their damage output. So a lot of the times in Baldur's Gate, you'll grab 3 Rogue, Level up, level up, level up. 3 rogue gets you an extra bonus action, so you can do some cool things with it as needed, right? Especially if you're like a throw or dual wield barbarian. So yeah, that right there is pretty solid stuff. And then I'll probably level up monk rest of the way for the open hand monk stuff until we hit our level limit right there. I will spam the button until I hit level 12. Oop, what if I wanted 1 level of something fun at the end here? So level down 1. That's now 3 monks. That means that gets my subclass. I probably pick open hand. 4 gets me the ASI. Maybe I want 6 for whatever. I think it's like unarmored or like rage movement for barbarian at the very end is like level 6 gets them like their extra movement ability. I think that's what that was. Either way, we notice here, what have I just done while talking through my planned build? I leveled up, leveled down, leveled up again, and it's tracking everything as it should. So it sounds to me that we have successfully integrated and tested a new feature. We've done the CI part of CD. So now that I'm happy with this, I've tested it mostly, and we've developed this thing. It's now time to redeploy. To do that, I'm going to go up to my terminal, stop the server. We're going to write the following. Get status confirms us that we have messed indeed in these files in particular. The character JSON file is going to be just, a relic of what we're working with. I'm going to write git add dot git commit adding new level down feature, right? That might be the name of the branch instead, or level down feature branch. We're going to git push -u origin dev. So the first time we push this code, it'll be pushed to the dev branch in GitHub. So now I'm ready to go. Like, this is now a stable, tested version of my dev branch. I'm happy with it, and now it's time to deploy it. With what we learned from the last video, as long as I push something to the main branch, render will detect it and auto redeploy for us. So to do that, we're going to go back to the main branch by doing git checkout main. We're going to merge the dev branch on over. Now what this merge will do, as you can see, it will copy over the version history. So if I did 15 commits in my dev branch, all 15 commits move or merge on over to this timeline. So think of branches as timelines, right? It'll merge that alternate dev timeline into the main timeline, and all I have to do is write git push. This will push it to my main branch. And if I'm ready to go back to preparing another feature, I'll simply switch back to the dev branch. But this pushed it to my main branch in GitHub. So I don't know if I have that up anywhere. I do. Here we go. Refresh. Check it out. There is the adding new level down feature commit. If I head to my render dashboard, it even has deploying as a status on my character planner. So here's the CD part of CI/CD, continuous deployment. I push something new that's stable and tested and integrated, CI, into my main branch. Render is connected to our GitHub repository and the main branch, which means it is auto-deploying, aka, you guessed it, CD. Now, because we're on the free tier, it might take an extra minute or so for it to actually rebuild, redeploy, and then update what their servers send as a response to this website. So this is my BG3 characterplanner.onrender.com live URL, and it might take a minute for me to actually refresh it and see my level down feature appear as well. So we're just going to kind of chill and try not to have too much dead air as I sit here quietly, or maybe I might pause the video until it finishes or something like that. But it's a simple project. It shouldn't take too long to deploy. It looks like it deployed the newer version. So does it work yet? I got the empty cache and hard reload. Not yet. Errors for the favicon. Remember, the favicon is what appears right here in our bookmark bars. So, like I said, it'll take a second for it to update and show our new deployment static site here. So, just takes a minute. Welcome to deployment. DevOps is a fun field to look into. How much dead air can I possibly fill here? I'm getting closer and closer to hitting my pause button so I can pause the recording until it's actually updated. But, there it is, new deployment. Running npm start on the new deployment. It recognized it. Let's go, y'all. Run node on server. There's our server running. Our new service is live. That wasn't too much dead air, was it, y'all? Okay. So I think it's ready to go. Let's check it out. Hey, level down. And again, the character JSON that I was messing with earlier is now up here, ending in that last level of barbarian, level down, and she works. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna remove. Nah, this is fine. Let's add a level of, I don't know, there's nothing really we can add that's going to make this build a lot better. Like I said, we should just go for that last level of monk, because it gets us the ASI at level 4 monk right there, which, it's very nice to have a new feature or something like that. But yeah, there you go. We have a pretty solid build going on here, and the level up feature and the level down feature is now deployed to our BG3 character planner on render link. So yeah, you have learned a concept called, I'm going to add this to the markdown now, CI/CD. Right? Continuous integration and continuous development. Now, semantics. There's a reason I said Debate Lord's definition of CI/CD, right? We have a practice of frequently integrating code changes to a shared repository, aka us writing on our dev branch is what we're doing. The integration should come with like automatic tests and processes, right? So it's super simple, but nevertheless, we are doing CI, and the CD is basically a practice of automatically deploying integrated changes to a production environment, which is what we did by hooking up our main branch to render's automatic redeployment for us. So in reality, CI/CD will have a lot of additional steps in the CI part that we've skipped. The CI part is us writing and testing our changes ourselves, but you would have code linting and style checks, things to make sure that if we have a certain style we need to adhere to, we have a test that goes through all the code we've written and make sure we use single quotes only if that's what our project uses, double quotes only if that's what our project expects. Any kind of tests to make sure the form hasn't been too heavily altered that breaks other functionality, etc. So maybe a staging environment that deploys it to a temporary stage area that we can then experiment with, have our team and family look at and things like that. Some kind of monitoring feedback that lets us know if anything goes wrong there. And the CD part we have indeed completed. So yeah, that about rounds out this video. Do I really want to make one more on? What else could I possibly do here? I did mention that we can change our server to respond with data that'll be more useful to us than what we currently have. Our data is just a message, as we know, that says level up, level down, successful. Maybe we can actually add some basic error handling, maybe an alert that populates when there is an issue, like when we hit this, for example, we get a bad request, have an alert that says level cap reached so that our users know what's going on, our users being ourselves, I guess. And we can also maybe discuss, like I said, instead of, oops, I just clicked on Postman. No, go away. Close! No, how dare you open in the middle of my video after I mistakenly clicked you. And changing it so our response structure maybe contains the newly modified data so we can update the DOM directly and save ourselves the request of requesting the character data each time. So basically like fetch and server-side optimizations and customing. This is supposed to be teaching y'all some cool server-side code tricks, so I might as well continue doing some server-side development. So yeah, I can't believe it. I'll see y'all in part 7, where we modify our response structure to save ourselves additional requests on the front end and do some basic error handling for our UI UX. So I can't believe it. I'll see y'all in the next video. Do the YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe. If you have your own on-render link, please show me. I want to see them because, again, I like seeing y'all succeed as much as I like teaching. So I demand my dopamine. What, serotonin? Dopamine? I demand my good feelings by seeing what y'all followed along with and deployed yourselves. Even if it's a carbon copy of what I made, I don't care. Send me the link that you have, and I want to see it. So, yeah, ta-ta.